Calm yourself.
Why aren't you allowed to wear a suit of armour in the House of Commons? And what does here mean anyway? All that and more on your new episode of Time Hop TV. Hi everyone, I'm Ryan Witchell. Welcome to Time Hop TV. Today we're going to be looking at the British Parliament. Before we begin, do not forget to click the subscribe button just below. I'm going to be uploading other history videos about the history of Parliament, also politics as well, to complement your studies, but also to help parents as well at home if you are interested. Okay, let's get started. So what is Parliament? Parliament's role is essentially to make and shape laws for the country. Parliament, the term, actually comes from a French word. Parler means to speak in French, and it's an old medieval word which just means it was a place for discussion. Parliament can be broken down into three parts. It consists of the House of Commons, the House of Lords, and the Monarchy. We are going to take a look at each of these individual parts in today's video. So let's start with the House of Commons. The House of Commons comprises of 650 members of Parliament, or MPs for short. They are elected for a maximum of 5 years, but they are not term limited, so they can run as many times as they want. I mean, there have been members of Parliament who have been there since the 1970s. Now, Parliament's role, or if you're a member of Parliament, your role is to scrutinise and debate government legislation. Legislation is another term essentially for laws. If you watch the news and you see the images of the green benches, well, that is the colour associated with the House of Commons. Traditionally, the House of Commons is always green. We don't really know why that is. Tradition sort of says that the benches during the medieval times used to be decorated in green, and architects ever really since then over the years when Parliament was rebuilt have decided to stick with that colour. The political party or coalition that wins the most seats after a general election usually goes on to form the government, and the leader of that party becomes Prime Minister. They are in charge of bringing forward legislation, so laws again, before the House to be debated, scrutinised, before it goes on to the House of Lords. Across the corridor lies the House of Lords. This is a chamber made up of unelected members of Parliament. They include life peers, bishops, 26 of those, and 92 hereditary peers. So when they die, their heirs will take over their title. Unlike the House of Commons, the House of Lords are not elected. They are appointed by the monarch on advice of the Prime Minister, and he or she, the Prime Minister, can create as many lords as they wanted to. There are about 785 members of the House of Lords at the moment, and there have been criticisms that it's become quite inflated or too big to operate as a proper legislative chamber. There are no limit to the numbers of the House of Lords, so as I said before, the Prime Minister can just keep on creating as many as they want. Whereas green is associated with the House of Commons, the House of Lords are associated with the colour red. This is traditionally seen as the royal colour, therefore the Lords adopted that as their colour. Now, the House of Lords, they are seen as a revising chamber, so legislation, laws, will come from the House of Commons and then go to the Lords, where it is revised and amended and seen as wanting to improve the legislation. The majority of the laws in the UK originate in the House of Commons and then go to the House of Lords. Both Houses of Parliament, both the Commons and the Lords, are meant to mirror each other. So when a bill is going through Parliament, a law being discussed, the exact same stages take place in the Commons and in the House of Lords. So they are both meant to complete each other on the way of a bill becoming law. Now, once it does become law, and don't worry, I will be doing a separate video, make sure you subscribe on how laws are made, but for the time being, let's just stick with Parliament. Once a law does go through its stages and is ready to be passed, it must go to the monarch to be signed off. Our final component of Parliament is the role of the monarch. So what does the monarch do within Parliament? And their role really is it's a formality essentially. So when a bill is going through its stages, right towards the end, there is something called royal assent, where the monarch will literally sign the bill to give it effect to become a piece of legislation. Now, this is a formality. We have a constitutional monarchy in Britain. I'll do a separate video about a bit more detail about that. But we have a constitutional monarchy. They really don't have much power. Parliament is the main body, it makes law, but it must go to the monarch in order to be rubber stamped. This is known as royal assent. Now, no monarch in recent history has refused to sign a bill. This is because the monarch's role is to respect the elected will of Parliament. Remember, Parliament is elected by the people. But you're probably wondering, when was the last time that a monarch did refuse? And that was all the way back in 1708 during the reign of Queen Anne. Now, for those who are studying GCSE history and citizenship, this part is definitely for you. We're now going to look at the different roles of Parliament. Number one being to pass legislation, as I said at the beginning of the video. Now, proposed laws or bills are introduced and debated by MPs, and they have the authority to amend, which means to change laws that become before Parliament. Government will introduce the laws, they are then debated through the various stages, and once it's passed the House of Commons, it could be amended and improved by members of Parliament. It will go to the House of Lords, where the process is repeated again. Now, what's quite important about the House of Lords is, as I mentioned before, they are appointed. And as they are appointed, a lot of them come from different backgrounds, such as law, former members of Parliament, perhaps they've been, in a field of medicine. So they are seen as experts. So they can use their expertise to amend and change the laws. Select committees also play an important role in shadowing different government departments and interrogating and scrutinising the work of government ministers. For example, select committees such as the Home Affairs Select Committee will shadow the work of the Home Office, which include issues like immigration, national security and terrorism. Number two, Parliament also has a function in debating and discussing national issues such as the NHS or national security. Parliament has an important role in holding the government to account on particular topics of interest to the public. And some MPs are certainly not shy from asking the really, really tough questions in the chamber.
He knows that is the truth. Yes. And to come here with his barrister's bluster to obfuscate the truth.
Number three. Now, certain international treaties do require parliamentary approval. For example, when we joined the European Union, the European Community as it was known then, in 1973. Also, although it isn't actually law, Prime Ministers in recent times have had to come to Parliament to seek parliamentary approval to deploy military forces abroad. This is seen as a democratic oversight of national security issues, and therefore the government are accountable to members of Parliament for sending troops abroad or if engaged in military conflict. Now that we've looked at the important roles of Parliament and House of Commons and the House of Lords, let's have a look at the quirky and strange traditions of the Palace of Westminster. Now you may be thinking, what is to stop these members of Parliament standing up and speaking for hours on end or talking over each other? Now there is a person in the House of Commons called the Speaker, and their job is to mitigate and watch the debate and make sure MPs don't speak at great length or talk over each other. They must be an MP, and they are meant to be independent, and they are also elected by every member of the House of Commons. So when there's a vacancy, every member will get one vote. Now, one of the strange traditions with this is when the new Speaker is elected, you will see that two members of Parliament will drag them, or pull them really, to their seat where they sit in the middle. And this goes back to the Middle Ages, whereby a speaker who had to deliver messages from the House of Commons to the king, unpopular news would make the speaker very unpopular with the king, and it's possible that he would lose his head. So, that doesn't happen now, but that's where the tradition stems from. If you watch debates in Parliament, you may also notice people on the benches bobbing up and down or sitting up and down. This is something known as catching the speaker's eye. So if you are a member of parliament and you do want to ask a question, you can stand up and sit down, and the speaker will sort of nod to you and know that you want to speak. So if you're ever wondering, you're watching some parliamentary debates or Prime Minister's questions every Wednesday and you're seeing people sitting up and down and you see, now you know why. Okay, so at the beginning of the video, I did mention about that term here. So a lot of members of parliament, when they like something that is said by perhaps a member of their own party or by the Prime Minister and they want to support them, they say here. So that comes from about the 1600s when people would say in parliament, hear him. Okay, so it's just been shortened to here. So a here is a really good thing. So if you ever become a member of parliament, or if you're campaigning and somebody says to you here, it means they agree with you. Okay, also I did mention at the beginning that about suits of armour. So if you were thinking of wearing a suit of armour, kids, on your trips to Parliament, then it's actually illegal. So King Edward II in the 14th century, he actually outlawed the practice because he was scared of his lords actually coming to take his throne away from him. And finally, is it illegal for someone to die in the Houses of Parliament? Well, technically speaking, it isn't, but there is a bit of a myth which says that if somebody does die in Parliament, then they get a state funeral. Therefore, they don't want them to have the state funeral, so they say it's illegal for you to actually die in the House of Commons. But history shows that many people have died in the House of Commons. Well, in Parliament, for example, Guy Fawkes, he was executed on the grounds, and also the only Prime Minister to ever be assassinated, Spencer Perceval, was also killed there. So even though it is technically not illegal, it's a bit of a myth that it is. Thank you for exploring the British Parliament with me today. Remember, don't forget to subscribe, like, hit the alert button if you want to explore more things with or politics based or history based to help you with your studies, or if you just have a fascination with history. I will be uploading more videos shortly. If you have any questions about this video, or if you want to suggest any topics for me to go into that may help you at home, then please just pop them in the comments box. Thanks for watching.